Welcome. Your journey begins now. All systems operational.
Welcome to StarFleet Radio, where we discuss anything and everything Star Trek, or really anything we want to. I'm Rachel.
I'm Marcy.
I'm Luis.
So we decided to start watching the original series, and just so everyone knows, we're going release order and not production order. I guess, do we want to start off by talking about the cage?
Yeah, let's start there.
I just realized I think it's the first time I've watched the cage since Strange New Worlds has been a thing, so it's interesting having so much more of Pike. When I used to watch the cage, it's like this was all you had of Pike.
Right. I forgot that this was our only, this was the first introduction to Pike, because obviously we've been watching Strange New Worlds and Disco, and so I forgot he was in the original series. I think it's interesting how they translated that character into the new iteration of it, having seen this now kind of more side by side. Interesting how Anson Mount translated that character.
Yeah, because I could see the similarities, and then some stuff of the cage. They left behind some of the parts of the cage and Pike in the cage that maybe didn't age the best. That went, maybe we don't do that in the 2020s.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like 70% of the cage.
Yeah. We'll eventually talk about the menagerie, but I would say the part that had aged the least well is that line, I just can't get used to women on the bridge. That line doesn't even make it to the menagerie. At some point, we're like, should we do one episode at a time? And then we're like, oh my God, that'll take forever.
Right. So we're going to go for 2 or 3 per podcast and get through it.
With the cage, it's interesting. I don't know. There's very few shows I feel like get second pilots, which is because we didn't end up watching. We didn't end up watching what the second pilot is for Star Trek because airing order is very weird. Because I believe the studio decided they wanted the Mantrap second, because they wanted something more action adventure-y. And I do see the difference there between that and the cage. The cage is very intellectual at some point. They're like, no, let's go fight.
Right. I did think it was interesting because I was watching and I was like, okay, who is this doctor? Do we ever see him again? Evidently not. He's gone.
I remember people being like, Boyce is going to be on Strange New Worlds. Apparently not. Never mind.
Oh, I didn't realize that was part of the discussion. That's interesting.
Because I see why people assumed that.
Sure.
And Mega is in a couple episodes of the original series, obviously, but only 2 or 3, I think.
Okay.
None of the ones we've watched today, obviously.
Okay. Another thing that I really loved was when that paper printed out. It was so cute, and
I did sit there. I was like, "Are they getting a fax?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering, do they print anything out for the rest of the show, or is that a one-off? When does this printing technology come back in? Because I enjoy a good printed paper, so.
I don't know. I don't know when they decide that, hey, maybe we should start faxing things again. Is it any weirder than the stacks of iPads in the 90s shows?
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know why, though. It made sense in the 90s. It was like, well, that's a different subject. Of course it's going to be on a different pad.
I think it was the 60s. They'd be like, how else would you get information besides paper?
That's true.
I will say the Telosian, these are remastered on Paramount Plus, but even so, the Telosian effect of them is fairly well from the 60s.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was wondering how they made their veins do that thing.
I'm unclear how much of that, if that is the remaster. I wish this is, but I think the Paramount, I wish it was easier to maybe watch the original broadcast versions of these and not always the remaster, because sometimes I want to see what those effects look like.
Yeah.
And do you remember? So when I follow on TikTok at one point was watching, he's like, these effects have really held up. Or you were not watching 60s effects. My days,
Sorry, the remaster is from some years ago.
Yeah, I'm not. Let me.
There is a Simpson episode when they make a joke about the Talosians, and you can see the effect in their heads. So
okay,
And that
Well,
Simpson
Yeah.
episode is from the 90s. So maybe that effect is in the
I'm
original.
going. According to Memory
episode.
Alpha, it has remaster air date, and for the Cage it says 2009, which is at this point fairly while ago. I don't know if they've been remastered since then though, for like Blu-ray.
So I guess probably the effect is in the original.
What I find interesting is that I really like number 1 in the Cage, and she was the character that apparently did not test well in the 60s.
Really?
Yeah, which is why you get you get that actress, you get Majel Barrett coming back as a blonde woman and playing a completely different character for the rest of the series.
So I feel terrible, but I did not recognize her as as the nurse from later. Like I
Yeah.
totally knew that was her as the nurse,
Yeah.
and that was Deanna Troy's mother. And I was following that whole saga of her career. And I watched the entire episode of The Cage, not realizing that was her.
Well, I remember the story of because they were like kind of like sneak her in as Nurse Chapel because they didn't want the studio to be like, we brought back the lady you said didn't test well, which is why she's blonde. But apparently, like Gene Roddenberry walked past her and didn't recognize her at first, and you were like, "Well, we're like they eventually ended up getting married. At this point, they were
Right. They were dating. So
they were dating.
yeah.
So he was like, "Well, if I didn't recognize you, I think there's a good chance."
Well, okay. I don't feel so bad then.
So yeah, there you go. It's funny, maybe just modern sensibilities. I'm like, number 1 is cool.
Right.
I'm like
Yeah.
so glad we have her on Strange New Worlds.
Yes. I love that character.
It's very interesting to me that we see Orions in the first ever like thing that is made of Star Trek, and then it takes so long to like really get lore about them. Like we're still really learning stuff about them, like in Lower Decks.
You know, the other thing was the Telosian was clearly played by a woman, but they were acting like it was a man, and I was confused by that whole situation.
I honestly have always said the Telosians being like, I feel like there's no gender here. I feel like there's not, which kind of made sense to me in that they clearly don't really understand how humans work.
Right. That's true.
I don't know how well we put this woman together wrong, so now she's disabled, so she can never leave. And I was like, well, I feel like I don't know how great that message is.
Yeah. That was definitely a problem. Because yeah, I mean, I feel like the takeaway was if you're hideous and unsightly, you should just stay hidden
Yeah.
where you be beautiful.
I think if they had like played a little bit more to the like, if she leaves here, she'll just be in so much pain.
Right.
That
Yeah.
I think is a better like. It makes more sense
To our mind.
Yeah.
But clearly at the time that was not. It was there was a lot more based on appearances at the time.
Yeah.
That yeah. I mean, like I even remember as a child getting glasses because I'm very nearsighted, and I remember as a child getting glasses and people being like, well, if you get the thicker frames, they won't be able to see that the lenses are so thick, so they won't know your prescription is so high. Like it was something to hide. Whereas now it's like, get the frames that are like comfortable and that you like.
Yeah.
And that's not
See,
even
at some point,
consideration.
I was told at some point with glasses, which I think they're like, oh, get thicker frames because they protect them better. And I was like, the glass itself better. I was like, see, that makes a lot more sense to my brain than
Right.
Yeah.
But it was definitely, I feel like when I was a child, there was still that remnant of like, hide if you have a disability, hide,
Yeah.
you know, and all these things. And now it's like, you know, and this is a good thing. A lot of that is out the window and should be.
It was also interesting for the first episode of Star Trek how much time they spend on like, we're just gonna hang out in the Mojave Desert. Like,
yeah,
I don't like it's interesting. Like, there's no space battle. There's no that. It's very intellectual. The Cage is a very intellectual episode. It doesn't like I enjoy The Cage. It doesn't necessarily surprise me that they gave this to a network. The network was like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know that The Cage is what I would make to sell someone on Star Trek.
I think The Cage feels more like a movie, and maybe that is why it got rejected. Because maybe the studios we're waiting for some action and
Yeah.
something much easier to film.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave the
I,
cage.
we're like, are they going to be going just like randomly hopping around to a bunch of different locations that would cost a lot of money every week?
Yeah.
So I was wondering, question to anyone who has the original versions. They were superimposing the stars over their faces to show when they were traveling on the bridge. And I just thought that was so cool and creative. And I wonder if that was added later or if that was in the original.
I feel like that is in the original.
Yeah, I think.
Don't quote
the
me
same.
on that.
Well-
I feel like I've seen an older version of the cage at some point, and that effect was still there. I
Okay.
thought that was but I also that was a cool way to show like warp when they're like,
Yeah. Like we're moving
yeah.
now. Oh, okay. It's a clue to the audience that now they're in
Mhm.
motion. Like the stars are going by. I just thought that was really cool. I was like, we could have kept that. We could have held on to that.
Like that would have been fun.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if that effect was too expensive to do every week.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. Like I think in the 60s that wouldn't have been like. I think that would actually involve putting two pieces of like film over each other.
Right. Another question I had watching it, going down on the planet, Spock appeared to be visibly limping. Is there any,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
is there
I
any comment
don't
for that?
know. I have
Okay.
no idea why I at some point I was like, I don't know why Spock is hurt. Like
I wonder if the character was hurt and then they cut that, or if the actor was hurt.
because I mean they do mention that they're coming back and a bunch of people were hurt, so maybe they're implying Spock was also hurt.
Maybe so.
It was also interesting. This is my first time watching The Cage since we had. So they are coming back. Is it Rigel? What is the name of the planet they're coming back from? Rigel 7. And in second season of Strange New Worlds, they like go back to Rigel 7 and you kind of get more information about what happened there. And it was like interesting. I was like, oh yeah, that was kind of messed up, and everyone loses their memory on that planet. No wonder they're like, oh god, what the hell was that?
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't seen. I don't think I'd really watched any of the original series since I'd watched Strange New Worlds, so it was fun to go back, and I'm sure we'll find even more. And I love. I got, watching Lower Decks, like I got a lot of the jokes, obviously, because I watched these as a kid, but there's more jokes that are like the jokes are going to make more sense now going
Mhm.
back and watching Lower Decks after, with this being fresher, because they did so
Yeah.
much great research going into that.
I know there's always, even I've seen so much Star Trek, obviously. It's still, I have to be like, where are those people who find all the Easter eggs? I need your help.
Right.
The 3 episodes of the original series with Boyce in are The Cage and the Menagerie Part 1 and Part 2, which is footage from The Cage. And then it also says Discovery, if memory serves, which is also archival footage from The Cage.
Oh,
So it'd be interesting to see if Strange New Worlds are like, hey, let's check out that old man doctor.
the creatures in the prison, in the cages,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't really deal with freeing any of them. I feel like if this had been a modern show, we probably would have tried to liberate
Although
the
those I
others.
couldn't tell if they were like, oh, those are like animals. Like it's not like quite the same thing. But yeah, I feel like it would still be like freedom for all now.
Right. Let's return those back to their
Yeah.
home planets. But I did love, those were very imaginative creatures. I mean, there wasn't a lot of like alien stuff out at this point,
Mm-mm.
and they were inventing all these things, which is
I
just
mean,
very cool.
so much not a thing that they were worried about like people thinking Spock looked like the devil because he had pointed ears. Like that's
Oh yeah.
and I was like, fascinating. Spock in no way looks demonic to me. He looks kind of
No.
like a Tolkien elf.
Yes, more, yeah, I was thinking more like an elf, which is always, when I'm drawing them, is always the danger of like, okay, I've turned this Vulcan into an elf now.
If you draw a Vulcan too pretty.
Right. I don't think I've ever seen anyone cosplay the dress that she wears in the castle, and I really feel like that is a missed opportunity.
I was looking at that one, and even though it's so short, but the like silver dress she wears is very cute. If I cosplayed it, I'd probably make it slightly longer,
Right.
or just like have like leggings under it.
Yeah.
But I was like,
Yep.
we might get some cute outfits in this.
Yes. Yep. But I mean, at the same time, like I kind of see, okay, yeah, no one's gonna just see right off the bat that this Renaissance style dress
Yeah.
is a Star Trek cosplay, but it is. You would know that it is.
Yeah. I feel like that's what I at Vegas a couple years ago. I did the Lon's like princess dress, and I was like, it's only works because this is a giant Star Trek convention. Any other convention, they'd be like, why is that girl in a ball gown?
Yeah.
So at the end,
Yeah.
Vina got to keep a copy of Pike, and it reminded me of Rose keeping a copy of the Doctor
Yeah.
in Doctor Who,
I've
which of course came much later.
yeah, it's interesting. I've always wondered because he's obviously like the copy of the Doctor Rose got is like completely a person.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, that's obviously not. I always wondered what they did with that. I guess but more because of what happened in the menagerie. I've always wondered, like, what happens to fake Pike?
yeah. That's a good question.
I did think it was interesting the thing where it's like turns out like, oh, all the stuff we've been doing has been working. They've just been messing with us. Is
Right.
what was interesting. They're like, oh, we did do this earlier. Hello, hole in the wall.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that was most of my thoughts about the cage. Did you have anything, Lewis, that you wanted to bring up before we move on to the next episode?
Not much, but I find interesting they put this love triangle with Pike number one and the other girl. I don't remember
Yeah.
her name. And that was when
The Yeoman. I don't remember her name
mm,
either.
Oh yeah,
and for the rest of the series we had none of that.
Yeah.
true.
No.
No
They
love
gave us a
in
love
Star Trek.
triangle, and all three of them are not in the rest of the series. And it was also a weird move to have that Yeoman be like, "Who would you choose?" And like be like, "Don't ask that." It's not. Yeah, he looks uncomfortable because he's uncomfortable. I was like, it's also not okay to harass him. Like,
Right. We ready to talk about the man trap?
yeah.
Okay.
And a new doctor has emerged.
So we have a new doctor and a new captain.
Yep. And
Uh,
a new basically everyone except Spock.
right. I mean, they kept the best. They kept the best actor.
Yeah. Although at one point, while I was watching it today, and there's at one point where the woman she just kept saying to McCoy Leonard over again, and then I was just like, do you think Leonard Nimoy was ever annoyed that they used his name for one of the other main characters?
I could have
Like,
kept my name. It would have been less confusing.
Yeah,
That's true. I never thought of that.
I didn't think about it till today because I just happened to like she kept saying his name over and over again. And I was like, why? They're like they had one actor they kept, and his name was Leonard. Like,
someone on set was like, you know what? That's a great name.
it's a great name. We're taking that.
Yeah.
You get Spock.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like I do like the man trap, but it's interesting to me that this is what the studio was like. This is the first episode.
I think it's just very. So it's very sci-fi because they were okay. So that first part where they're looking at this woman and they're all seeing something different.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of had to write the language on how we're going to tell the audience that these men are seeing different things and put
Yeah.
that, how you're going to show that to an audience because it's each their viewpoint and they're all standing in this. So I thought that was cool. Just
to be like
was
they're
no
not
story.
like, and it also made it clear like the guys aren't being weird about it. Like there actually is different women. Like
Yeah.
And I was like, this young man that they're being like they're acting like he's acting weird because to him like, but it's like no, he's legitimately confused.
Right.
And I almost wonder if this was added after the fact. I'm trying to see is that like you get like what seems like a captain's log for Kirk, except it's like in past tense. Like Kirk is telling that from the future.
Mhm.
He's like, what we didn't know was this.
In case you miss it.
Yeah. But it reminded me, I'd have to look at exact air dates. It reminded me very much the way that of like Twilight Zone, like the narration of Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Mhm.
Which is just weird because I was like, Star Trek doesn't really. We have like logs after this, but they're never like they never have information they shouldn't have yet.
That's a good point. I want to bring up the Twilight Zone when we talk about Charlie X in a minute.
That's fair. There's definitely original series in Twilight Zone have like there's similar vibes to a lot of it.
Yeah, and they happen very, very close in time as well. So
Mhm.
I think those comparisons are valid.
Yes. This is one of those things where I was like, when did the Twilight Zone actually air? I was like, it feels like a chicken and the egg situation where I'm not sure which one is the chicken.
So the Twilight Zone was first.
Okay, that makes sense. And they do a good job of like foreshadowing or like dropping hints. Where the first time when McCoy says like she hasn't aged at all, and the doctor's like, and he was like, next time you see her, she'll be appropriately aged. And I'm like, that's not suspicious at all. Like,
Right.
Also, we need salt. We need salt. We need
yes,
salt.
Yeah.
I also like they do a really good job of like the kind of horror-y elements of having her like her for lack of a better for the salt monster because she's McCoy's ex for most of it. When she churns into the person she just killed, it's like, oh, creepy.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
That
Although this will come up again in Charlie X, but poor Yeoman Rand. I just need men to stop being creepy to her.
she cannot get away from it.
Because we will see more of that, unfortunately, in the original series, but that character specifically.
The actress was having to wear this enormous wig.
Yeah.
I don't know if she had a lot of fun going to work.
Because clearly at some point they just had, like, same actress with wig with gray, same actress with wig with a little less gray to be like, this is her 10 years ago. Although it's interesting, and I was like, maybe this is not how, when they're like, McCoy, we're seeing your ex-girlfriend, you should bring flowers. And I went, she's married now, that's weird.
That is weird.
And I was like, how well are you guys getting along with your exes? I was like, I'm not actually against this, but like,
Well, I feel like the husband was, well, and obviously he knows that it's not really his wife, but
yeah.
probably a tell because the husband is totally fine with it.
Mm-hmm. Has the husband, like, did we come to the conclusion the husband at some point just lost it out of grief? Because I was like, he seems clearly weirdly okay with this thing pretending to be his wife.
Right. It was almost like he was just thankful to like be able to see her face.
Yeah.
Which I kind of understand, but is really
I will
weird.
say, considering there's no other people on that planet, maybe that's
Right.
probably why.
Yeah.
Because as much as he was like, I like being alone, it's like no one actually likes being like
Yeah.
you do. There's a reason isolation is considered a pretty horrible punishment in prison.
I thought it was interesting too the font changes that were made between these two episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And the color change and everything. And
the complete uniform switch.
Yes, the uniform switch.
Yeah.
I do love the texture of their uniforms. It just looks like really soft, velvety material, and it seems like it would be really warm and like space would be cold. And so they dressed them like really comfy. Also, there were some guys in the back of this episode that were in like very, very comfortable looking onesies. And I'm honestly so jealous. I want pajamas like that.
I know. I actually thought that during the cage too, and I was like, I don't know how well these work as military uniforms, but pajamas, I want.
They just look so comfortable. They just look so comfortable.
It's interesting. With the creature from it though, that it clearly just like didn't understand humans well enough because it was just like, why did it make it look like a random woman this guy had met before? That's confusing. Very much is working off of instincts.
Also, I was like, okay, you're doing all this other stuff. There's salt right there on the tray. Just like
Hmm.
make up some excuse and grab the salt. Like,
Hmm.
wouldn't that be easier than killing people?
Right? Because especially at some point in Star Trek, if it's been like they got there and they're like, "Oh, hey, do you have a bunch of salt? We just need to give this thing a bunch of salt." They'll be like, "Oh, great, here's a bunch of salt."
But he literally follows the trail
Yeah,
several minutes.
I think it's very much it's a creature working on instinct.
Yeah.
So like, I see salt. As far as I know, that's the only salt in the world. Besides the one I'm killing people for. That's like in their body. I don't how much salt. I did have a thought. There was at some point I was like, so like I think nowadays I should be like, hey, here's some Gatorade. You'll love it. I did like the when when it's like why didn't it kill Spock? And it was like, oh, I'm from like a different planet because he's half human. He should have a little bit similarities.
Right.
But I know in a couple episodes we'll get to the actual pilot, and that teaches something about like, oh yes, my ancestor that was a human, and I'm like, you mean your mother? Like,
Oh, that's true. So yeah, they hadn't really
yeah.
done all that yet.
But I do think that is an interesting thing to be like, yeah, Spock is not human, so like a little bit different salts on Vulcan.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hang out at Sulu's plant room.
Yes. Oh, that plant that they were going like clearly like a puppet,
Yeah,
and I love that.
I love Puppet Plant. It's
Yeah.
great. I also love very like reminded me of Tribbles, and that he would be with like, no, get away from that thing.
Yeah.
Get that thing away from me. And I was like, this is, although I was like, also think, other I was thinking, I was like, oh, I hope this plant shouldn't have any salt in it, right? That shouldn't be a threat.
So
I feel like salt water is bad for plants.
yeah, no, it shouldn't.
Mm.
Salt would, yeah, but the average human body contains 250 grams of salt. So I
Actually, more than I
guess,
thought.
yeah,
So
it's more than I thought too. So actually, that's probably why. Okay, and I can't believe I'm Googling this. I'm like, human versus salt shaker. Like, what's a good choice for the alien?
some there's some FBI agent being like, what the hell is this Google search? They're like, I'm not even concerned. I'm just confused.
Right? I'm trying to understand a Star Trek alien and the choices that are being made.
God,
Is
this
she
is
going
like
to cook?
this is what it looks like when writers are Googling stuff and you're just like, what? Are they trying to murder someone? Oh no. Just trying to murder a fictional character. That's fine.
I'm trying to understand a fictional character.
Although it's interesting because I know in here we see Sulu's plants. Is this the only time we see that his job seems to be plants, not driving the ship?
And
Maybe.
also, I like that it's giving a precedence for the plants in Discovery that oh, what is his name?
That Saru has?
Yes, Saru's
Mhm.
plants.
I do hope if we ever get Sulu on Strange New Worlds, I hope they bring Plant Sulu back. I
Oh
want
yeah.
to see his plant room.
Yeah.
And you know what? I hope it's a puppet again. I hope we get a puppet on that plant.
Please do puppet plant.
I've just now remembered the first time I ever remember like putting this episode. Like I probably watched this episode as a kid at some point. I can't. This might have been on Netflix, but they clearly had misunderstood something when they had written the description because they wrote Scotty instead of McCoy. And I remember watching the episode and being like, Scotty's not even in this episode. We do the one Spock Kirk thing is you get Ahura saying like that when Spock isn't, emotional enough for her, she's like, Captain Kirk is the closest thing you have to a friend.
That's true. Was it okay? Was it this episode or was it Charlie X where Uhura makes some very interesting statements to Spock?
Is Charlie X where she plays that instrument?
Yes,
Okay.
she sings.
Yes, she sings.
Yeah.
I feel like both of them kind of have stuff with Uhura and Spock. Like, what were you like? What do you
Yeah,
remember what you said?
it was, I don't know. I mean, it was almost like she was trying to like talk, she was talking about his character. It seemed a little flirty, and I was like,
Mhm.
am I reading this correctly?
I think so. I wonder if like now because the Abrams movies put them together, it like that those things seem more flirty.
Possible. That's possible.
Because I don't remember ever getting that vibe as a kid watching the original series, but like as an adult watching it, I was like, oh, they're kind of flirting.
Yeah.
I feel like Strange New Worlds has picked up on that at all. Like I don't think their Spock or Uhura ever flirting with each other. It feels like to me. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about it, Lewis?
I think no.
Okay.
We come from No Women on the Bridge, and now we are in Women Are Dangerous.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they're not allowed on the bridge.
Yeah.
This one tried to take all our salt. What? We do go from that to Uhura being like the communications officer, which is like for the time amazing that a black woman has like a job on TV that is like not a maid basically.
Mm-hmm. And they do make her seem like a professional. Like she's checking out the console, and like she's not just doing the calls, she's doing the technical stuff as well. And they do make her seem like an expert. So definitely for the time.
Do like they have her kind of complaining about the job a little bit, but in a way that everyone gets annoyed with their job. And I was like, yeah, that's what professionals do.
Right.
I guess we want to talk about Charlie X.
It is time. It is time. This dumpster fire of an episode.
That is like, I will say, I'll give to the actor playing Charlie does a good job. He's a complete creep, but he does a good job to being that creep.
Sure.
But I was just like, oh no, the entire time.
Yeah. So this episode reminded me of the Twilight Zone It's a Good Life episode where the boy keeps sending people out to the cornfield if they're not thinking like happy thoughts and saying, so everyone just keeps complimenting him like, you're doing a good job, which I feel like is what the ship was doing who dropped him off with them.
Yes.
Just very complimentary. Everything is great, but like he can even see deep down like they don't really think this, and he resents them for that.
Because I've always like, if I'm trying to like intellectually look at this episode, I've always said like someone dealing with like puberty, but I was like, still don't handle puberty like this, please.
There's definitely that sort of continuous excuse for his behavior that the show gives him, but I don't think it's appropriate, obviously. But I think there's more to it than that. I mean, it's also like it's a complete lack of parenting at any point in his life, not just puberty, because he doesn't know how to interact with people. It's not just that he doesn't know how to interact with the opposite sex. He doesn't know how to interact with humans.
I do think the message that like actually he's a lost cause is maybe not the best.
I think the message is this is what happens when a child grows up without parents or something like that.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
But very exaggerated.
A cautionary tale. And yeah, Janice Rand just is the victim of this episode.
Again, like I think she's a really fun character, but every time I see her in an episode, I was like, oh no, what's gonna happen to her today?
She's the O'Brien of the original series.
Yeah.
Ran must suffer.
Apparently, Jesus Christ. At least she gets, I'll say that she gets cuter outfits to suffer in than O'Brien.
It's true. She has better hair.
Yeah. Sorry,
we have to check. I think we have to check if in the later episodes Rand is still suffering. I think she's like the signal that things are very complicated.
Well, Yeah, well, then it's like she kind of disappears, and I know there's like behind the scenes with the actress that are like not all of it great, but then I do believe she comes back in the movies and like she's a doctor now, and I went, thank God, something nice happened for this character.
And she comes back in Voyager for an episode, right?
Oh, I think
Uh,
so. Is she like in a flashback? Is that what it is?
yes, flashback.
Yeah, because
That's the name of the episode.
um she's with Tuvok, right?
Yes, in the Excelsior
Mm-hmm.
with Zulu.
Yes. Also that woman losing her face was creepy. I don't like that kind of stuff.
I was wondering how they did that and how they made sure that was safe.
It looks like a mask. I don't know how safe it was, but I
Maybe the Toilax Zone did it first, so they know it's safe.
yeah, hopefully. I don't know. As a fan of The Wizard of Oz, sometimes I worried that the effects were more like that, where sometimes they weren't safe. Like, you don't have to make up messed up stuff that happened on the set of The Wizard of Oz. Real messed up stuff actually happened.
To be fair, like, not in their defense at all, but
Yeah.
just to put a positive spin on it, like, nobody died of that, so that's good. There was,
Yeah.
you know, possibly possibly bladder cancer, but that,
Yeah.
you know, that was sort of unknown at the time.
Yes, I'm not mad. It's like if you didn't know asbestos was dangerous, that's one thing. Like Kurt is shirtless for part of Charlie X, right?
Yes.
Because they get his shirt off
Yeah.
quick. Like we are 2 episodes in.
And only 2 of his episodes.
Yeah. Like they really want to show off Shatner, didn't they?
It does appear so.
I think it's also there was also confusion. They're like, "Here's Kirk," and a bunch of women were like, "Thank you, we'll take Spock," and they're like, "What's happening?" Like, I will say at least the episode at least does take the thing because I feel like sometimes in a like older things are like actually like the woman she's to get over herself. They're like, no, Rand's right. This is weird.
That's a good point.
Because I remember being worried that they're going to be like, she's overreacted. Like, no, she's not.
So this boy sees this action between 2 men and then of course tries it out on I just find it so odd because like fast forward as many decades, like it's not appropriate between anybody now.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
and at the time it was like, oh no, it's fine. But you have to do it like only with certain people. And
I was gonna
now
make it.
it's
Yeah.
but now it's like, no, we don't, this is not appropriate workplace activity.
No, I was like, if you work with the people, don't do that.
Right.
I was like, that's basically something for you and like your romantic partner, and that's about it.
Right. So it's definitely a sign of the times.
I
But
was gonna make a joke, but I think this is true. High fives hadn't been invented yet. High fives were invented in the 70s. I don't understand how that's true, but it is.
is that really?
I like high fives like got they were invented like for like during sporting events, and it was like in like 77 or 78.
It's true. October 2nd, 1977.
Yeah. I think there's like a thing where like there's a couple different sports things that could be like where it came from, but like it's all around that time.
Wow. Okay.
But I don't understand how we weren't just high five. Like I was like high fives, you're so natural. I don't understand.
Yeah.
That's just like a fun fact I like to bring up to people because it's so bizarre. Like,
But like out of all the places, like why not a pat on the back? You know?
yeah, I've
A
had
shoulder
anywhere else but there, honestly.
Yeah, an elbow bump. I don't know, anything. Anything but what they
I think elbow bump because COVID wasn't a thing yet. Uhura, Nichelle Nichols' voice, beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm loving my little musical interlude. I was like, watching that, it didn't surprise me that Stranger Worlds were like, yeah, we got to bring in the fact that Uhura's a good singer.
I think it's interesting too because yeah, I don't know. Sometimes they do things in Star Trek now and then like even if there's like a slow moment, people complain like,
Mhm.
you know, this episode was a waste of time, like they didn't move fast enough or whatever. And it's just like, look how much they took their time in this
Yeah.
original series and they let the moment sink in. And I think, that's
Sometimes
okay.
what people will be like, "This episode was such filler," and I looked at it like, "This is called character development. It's important."
Right. Yeah. Just be running around firing phasers all the time.
Yeah, like this is called this you do this so that when they get hit by the phaser later on, you care.
That was one thing in the previous episode, um
Mhm.
that and they were doing it to tell us about Spock, but they were like, we lost a guy, and he was like, okay, let me know what
Mm.
happened, and it was like, but not just Spock, honestly, people were very casual about that. And
I was like, no, I was thinking, I was like, no wonder the original series everyone was making jokes about red shirts. Jesus, they don't seem to care quite enough.
right, yeah, that was weird. So yeah, so coming from like a show like Discovery where every crew member is taken as very serious and valuable, um
Uh-huh.
to the original series is
Mhm.
just the flippant disregard for human life at times
Yeah,
is jarring.
people cared whether people died in the 60s. Like,
Right. But were they saying like in the future that people are going to be more logical and they're not? I don't know. I'm
I don't
not
know.
sure what they were
I don't
trying
know.
to
I think
say.
that's weird because one character doing it is Spock.
Right.
So you're like, okay, well that makes sense that Spock is like controlling his emotions.
But the other characters, I feel like yeah, that was a little it it felt like they didn't want to spend time on it, or they wanted to maybe make it seem more
Yeah.
militaristic or
I think it's partially that and partially maybe just TV was different then where it was like this isn't a character that like this isn't a main character, we need to move on. Like
yeah, that's true. And I just want to mention before we finish, the colors. I love the colors. Just visually, the show
Mhm.
is so bright and eye-catching. Um, a lot of things that we have today are very monochromatic, and
It's interesting because I think some of the monochromatic stuff is like, "Ooh, your TV is so crisp," and the new thing at this time was, "Oh my god, your TV's in color."
right.
Like,
Mm.
So I was talking about this on Blue Sky, and I got this comment, and I have no idea if it's true. Honestly, if it's not true, I don't even care. They were like, they were partnering with a company to sell color TVs by doing this show this way.
I've I've heard of that. I don't know where to verify that.
I don't know either. I did a Google search. I couldn't find anything. I asked my dad. He'd never heard of it. Obviously, he was, alive at the time. So
Mhm.
it must not have been like common knowledge that this was what they were doing. So I don't know. But at the same time, I like that. I think it's plausible. Um, so anyway, I don't know if that's why they're all super colorful with their clothes, or if it was just like 60s pop art and that was the
Yeah.
the vibe at the time. But
I have found a physical ad. Well, not I found a picture of it online where they're like using Star Trek pictures to be like, this is why I should buy a color TV.
so it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it could be an artistic choice, and
Mhm.
also they want to sell TV.
Right.
It might be an artistic choice that is like, oh, this goes well with selling color
Mm.
TV.
Well, it certainly was just visually, it was eye catching.
Although I've always wondered because I know if you like look at the physical things that the the yellow uniforms read more green. I've always wondered, it's like, were they supposed to be green and it just kind of ended up more yellow?
I believe so.
And then they're like, we'll just pretend they were always wearing gold.
I believe they were green.
And then Kirk at some point wears that green wrap thing that's like clearly green.
So They were designed to be chartreuse green, but they appeared gold on screen due to the lighting. The green tunic, it was a different fabric, and so it photographed more accurately. So they were
That
more
makes
that
sense.
color.
Mm.
And then I do love eventually we're pretending these has always been gold, right? Shh.
Right.
Don't worry about it. You know, it's actually interesting with Uhura when it comes into a crewman for her. I actually found it interesting that it's like cool that a TV show in the 60s had someone like speaking Swahili. I feel like when I was younger, that's probably the first time I ever heard an African language. Was probably watching this, or maybe The Lion King.
Probably
Yeah.
heard some of the line.
Although I do love Uhura being like, I would have remembered that man. Where did he come from?
Right.
He was too attractive not to have noticed before.
Right. But when they walked past them, they're like in the hallway having a private moment together, and Sulu just like walks by. I'm like, I feel like I would like notice
Mm-hmm.
that going on just to my left. So I thought that was weird. Like, is this normal just to have happening, during work hours? Or yeah,
Maybe. Although maybe it looked like a completely different man to Sulu, and he was just like, I don't like what's going on.
yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Oh, because we don't know.
We don't know what it looked like to Sulu. Or maybe he was also like, this is weird that some dude I've never met before on the ship we're all stuck on is like flirting up Ahura. Let's just grab her just in case. Worst of the worst, she'd just be like, no, I want to keep doing this. And be like, okay, bye.
Right. I mean, and yeah, to a certain point, like you're not gonna stare if something like that's going on. But they didn't
Yeah.
even. Anyway, it caught my attention. Lewis, do you have anything else about Charlie X? I mean, other than the rampant sexism.
Not really. I think they're trying to make like a James Dean in space. It's that was my first impression. Like it's the American 60s. I know
Yeah.
James Dean is more for the 50s, but at that
When-
time when I was a child,
Yeah.
that was everything I know about that.
When did he die in the like late 50s or early 60s? I'm trying to remember.
1955.
Okay. Oh, so mid 50s.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I definitely can see that. Especially because obviously James Dean's like the legacy of James Dean like loomed large over that time period.
Right. I mean, Rebel Without a Cause came out in 1955, so
Yeah.
that was all very fresh.
Because I did notice they had like the first woman, although that was actually the creature finding a body. I was like, she's reacting a lot, but I didn't like think the like. I was like, okay, they kind of toned it down when it was like the Starfleet officers, women finding bodies. They like reacted, but they weren't like, oh my god, I'm gonna have like go into hysterics.
No, I was remembering that. I think I watched Star Trek the first time, maybe at the same time I watched Back to the Future. So
Oh,
I had this
that's
image of the 50s in America,
yeah.
similar to Charlie X.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, as far as like the message for this goes, I really do think it's about parenting,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of parenting. Which, I mean, it's like, man, when was like Leave It to Beaver coming out?
That's 50s, right? The
Yeah,
problem is that obviously all of us like watch these like in the 90s. Like
that is the problem. So Leave It to Beaver was 6 seasons starting in 1957. So it's definitely in that sort of world.
yeah.
And let me see.
Like I really had to explain to someone that Happy Days is not a show from the 50s.
Oh yeah. And Father Knows Best was also 6 seasons in
Yeah.
1954. So it is sort of coming. So having the importance of like family and parenting probably was definitely like still in the public mindset as like a theme that would have been recognized on television, and they would have
Mhm.
probably understood that message of what was being portrayed on screen better than us who are, being more distracted by some other thing. And we're not
Yeah.
used to that message being told to us in that way by film anymore.
Mm-hmm. And then it was just like even that, like if there's like sometimes if something is a reaction to something else and you don't know it's a reaction to that, you're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Actually, of all three of you, what do you think your favorite of the three we watched today were?
I would have to say the man trap.
Lewis?
Probably say the cage.
I think mine's the cage too, but I think mainly because like the cage is like so different compared, like the man trap feels like, oh yeah, this is an episode of of the original series, and the cage is like feels more special because it's different.
Yeah, it's more like what are they trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
There are some terrible parts, of course, but
Yeah,
the parts where we
that's it. I do
see.
really enjoy the
Mhm.
man trap as well. It's not.
Right. It's yeah.
And then Charlie creeps me out. So
Right. Yeah, that's a tough one because the cage is special, but it also feels separate from the series.
hmm
Um yeah. Anyway, I'm excited though to keep watching because I think there's going to be a lot
yeah,
of good stuff.
I
And
think it'll be really fun to like look at these classic episodes.
yeah, and I just haven't seen them in so long,
hmm
and just being able to connect it to these lower decks references and things is going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like one of the things where I'm like, it's because I a lot of when I originally watched the original series, it was just me watching it alone in like college, and I was like, it's fun to like have someone to talk to about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm so glad that we got to talk about it. I'm so glad that we're doing this because I've wanted to go back and watch the original series for so long now. So I'm really glad that we got back together to do it all together because it's gonna be so much more fun this way. So thank you to the listeners for following along. We hope that you join us for the other episodes. We're gonna try and cover one or two or I'm seeing we're gonna try and cover 2 or 3 episodes of the original Star Trek um, each podcast. So if you want to follow along with me on Blue Sky, I am at Marcy London is my handle, and I'm sorry, it's at Marcy London Art is my handle on Blue Sky, and be happy to talk to you there.
My handle is Shimatrek at Blue Sky. If you want to follow me, I'm glad.
I'm Dramadork884 on Blue Sky and many other places that I don't want to list now. And we're at StarFleet Radio on Blue Sky as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you can follow the podcast there, and we hope you join us on our new trek.
Our new Trek adventure.
StarFleet Radio is a Balloonhead Productions presentation.